Hi, my name's Steve Greystock. I'm Senior Programmer at the Toronto International Film Festival, and it's my great pleasure to welcome Heather Hatch, the director of WOCHIIGII LO, End of the Piece, the film you guys just saw. So applaud digitally or whatever. Welcome, Heather. Thanks for being here, and thanks for the film.
Absolutely.
So really powerful piece, and you spent, I think, like 5 years documenting what was going on with the battle against the dam. Can you talk about how it sort of started and the filming developed? Did you intend to make a film initially, or was it a relationship with the various leaders of the protests, the action?
Yeah, it was relationship based for sure. I had done some work with a young activist and poet named Helen Knott, who was, I'd done some videos with her and Cody Savard, and she was posting on Facebook about what was happening and that nobody was listening, and that really struck something inside me that nobody would hear their story. So I jumped in a vehicle with my friends and we started filming.
And how did it develop? I mean, 5 years is a long, it's an extraordinary amount of time to spend on the film. And also, I think, it really does capture the intricacies of the situation, because it's quite complex, but also, obviously the courage of the people involved in the fight against the dam.
I'm not sure what the question was now at the end.
Oh yeah, I'm not sure either. Maybe, but it took 5 years is a long time to dedicate to that kind of event. I mean, was there a point you thought you'd finish and then the story just kept developing, or how did that sort of work out? When did you decide that that the film had in some ways it's always an artificial ending. I mean, I think you took it to the logical conclusion at this point with this version of the film, but how did you know when you were finished?
Well, I think building this film took a lot of relationship building. Diane Abel, the main character, is somebody I've talked to a lot and relied on a lot from her and her community. So a lot of it was gathering footage from different people. So it's not all, like, Fred's the DOP, Frederick Croach, but there's also hard drives getting sent in the mail to me. And even 2 months ago, the opening song that you'll see from Elder Max Desjardins was just sent to me on a CD. So a lot of the time was collecting the pieces of the story, as well as attending events and driving out to see Diane and stuff. How to know it was finished? It's just, people, when they've told everything they have to tell, sometimes there's just no more to say. So I think the characters had given me everything that they could.
To me, it's always quite like the determination of the two bands were the smallest bands in the province and involved in the treaty was just phenomenal. I mean, were you ever surprised by it? I mean, like the diligence and the dedication is just it's really, it's quite something.
I think, to answer that question, it's like it's a necessity. There's no other way for them to go about it. I always think like this, it's hard to make a film for 5 years. It's hard to dedicate. But then I always think, these are their lives and they can't leave this situation. This is their land. This is their ancestors. This is everything. And I can make the film and present it to the world and hope that it helps. But this is, when we talk about what the film is showing, is kind of an ethnocide, which means like to take somebody's culture, but to leave them. So we're just hollowing them out and leaving them on the edge of a reservoir. So, I mean, it's either accept that or fight it. And I think that's what you're seeing is a fight for life.
And you found like some amazing well, the people involved in the battle are really kind of, I mean, they're amazing people, not just because of their dedication. I often find their that kind of caustic humor that they view things with. Certainly the fellow who's talking about the language, I think it's his grandfather who's talking about how his grandfather spoke 3 languages because, maybe they'd like to learn the other 2 because they didn't understand what no meant in English. And there's the woman who's selling the refrigerator for 400 million. Which that was like, I mean, they it's a bit sort of, it can be sort of sinister humor at a certain point, but it's like, I mean, they're kind of, that really struck home, the way they could approach that with, the dedication, but also sort of, a vibrancy too. So.
Yeah, I think what we're describing is resilience.
Yeah.
It can be very humorous and beautiful when you have to survive things, or, what do you do when your government's suing you for $420 million? It's heavy, but you can also poke fun at your government by selling a freezer for the same amount. Yeah.
It really, the film really sort of depicts the sort of death of political irony in a lot of ways. I mean, there's that, the footage of the workers' compound or apartments or whatever, where there's these sort of absurdly lavish luxuries, next to some communities that are far from wealthy, and they're about to have traditional rights and the land taken away from them. So I mean, it really it's quite striking how sort of tone deaf and bizarre that whole segment is on the, I mean, it was a local news show, I think, right? Where you got the,
I think it's important, when you're trying to make a point or tell a story, it's sometimes you can just use the realities of the situation to show the absurdity of it. Through the, the juxtaposition of one story against another really drives the point home when you don't have to say much.
For sure. I mean, that says that scene in particular really says quite a bit, because it's just sort of, it's so divorced from the local circumstances and the local, concerns.
Yeah.
I mean, in addition to the, the film really sort of offers up a compendium on the kind of evasions and the lies governments tell in order to, I guess, ultimately serve the rich and the powerful. There are numerous surprises that sort of pop up, that they never looked at they never really did an environmental assessment. When they got an environmental assessment, they ignored it. And then, I mean, I suppose in the end, I mean, to me, the one of the bigger shocks was when the current governing party, which campaigned against the dam, did a complete about face at the end. I mean, were you surprised when that happened? Did you expect it based on the previous, what had gone on with the Liberal government?
I think, that's the BCUC, the British Columbia Utilities Commission, when they did their assessment, I think there's a lot of hope for the communities that, finally, we can show that this is a project that's way over budget, not necessary. And so I think, I think that there's a lot of sadness after that. And a lot of people gave up the fight after that.
Yeah.
I don't remember the question. I know that one woman who was very a large advocate, Arlene Boone, just didn't want to do media after that.
Right.
I think, I don't remember what the question was.
That's just keep going.
Yeah, I think it's like the false climax of the film, right? Like maybe they're going to finally stop it, and then they don't, and then it's hard to face that. Like, what do you do when there's no logic left in a fight? You know, it's hard.
I think I finished, but I mean, to me, it was like, in some ways, it wasn't a surprise, but I have to say I was still a bit shocked that the current BC government, you know, had campaigned against the dam, and then the minute they were in power, you know, oh, it's too far along, right? Which of course was their major complaint about the Liberal government. So, you know, I mean, it's just that really, that level of brazenness sort of surprised me, and I'm probably a little cynical about this, but I just, you know, it was just a big shock. I mean, really, I mean, as shocked as it just seemed. I didn't think they'd try to brazen it out quite that way.
Well, I think that clip we have of John Horgan just saying, you know, I'm not the first one to stand up here and disappoint First Nations. It's just, he's just admitting that they're disappointing them, and that's the end. Like, there's no, I don't know. It's like I mean, that's a really good way to point out how our government does treat these situations, or how our relationships are with First Nations is, well, I mean, basically we just do it and then say sorry. But
yeah.
So there's no relationship building. It's just the same, I guess, the same story.
Yeah. How, when you put it is sort of, I mean, to me, that really drove home how you know, how uncommitted and how like duplicitous the government is, regardless of which party's in power. I mean, especially on these in this kind of situation.
I don't know much about how corporations run, but I would say it's probably, I mean, BC Hydro is a crown corporation, so I'm sure they have a lot more pull probably than we think they do.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah, I have to say you did an excellent job, sort of pulling out the various levels of chicanery and, you know, bad faith dealings. Obviously more to do with the not the current NDP government, but the previous Liberal government, because it was ongoing. And I thought the history was really done in a very, I mean, just juxtaposing the history with what was going on in terms of the fight against the dam was very effective in like sort of bringing in the Bennett Dam and you know, obviously the history of what had happened, the ecological, environmental history, because all those, you know, I mean, even down to the absurdity of the engineers claiming that, you know, a hill that was full of shale was, you know, rock solid, right? Like,
yeah.
You just sort of, this is not reality, right? You're working on a different plane.
Yeah.
Did you, how deep did you have to go? I mean, you had that great, that author who really sort of set the table too. Yeah, who did a really, really great job about, you know, giving the history. Was that a huge part of the time in building in constructing the film, doing all that research?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Just starting from, there's an author, can't remember her name, Shirley Matheson, I think. Mm-hmm. She did a piece called "This Was Our Valley." So it's like way back when the first dam was built, all the history of the ranchers and stuff, through to Wendy Holm did a series of essays, Sarah Cox, and then also the oral histories, and, you know, the consultations and making sure everything's being done properly, and then even finding the characters. And yeah, it took a lot of time, for sure.
Well,
I'm reading about treaties, understanding the history of treaties in Canada, the 7 Years' War, like, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's stellar, the dedication that went into it. I don't think I've seen anything that had any film that's had such a deep dive into the history and the and it really brings it home when you find out that it's they've hired Bill Bennett's grandson, I think, to or Wacky Bennett's Will. Sorry, I used to live in BC. They used to refer to him as Wacky Bennett. That the
because of the
Bennett,
and then WAC Bennett
yeah. But the that it's grandson. Yeah, it's just ongoing. It's it's really just sort of rampant cronyism, really.
Yeah.
But I've never seen a film that dug so deeply into how that situation, these kind of situations are, extended and exploited. It's really, really powerful. Do you know what's next in terms of the where's the dam and the sort of resistance to it now? I mean, are they just going steam ahead? Or?
That they were able to get BC Hydro to release documents to them is something that they did win recently for their upcoming court case about their treaty violations. So hopefully that helps them, but they still have their day in court before the reservoir is filled, but I'm not sure how that's going necessarily. Sorry, I'm just thirsty.
Oh, that's okay.
Raven Trust is where they're going for their lawyer, like their legal case and stuff. So I am in contact with them after a festival run to maybe do a more grassroots approach to this.
Mm-hmm.
But
is it I think one of the things the film also does extraordinarily well, particularly at the end where the titles at the end which talk about the fact that this is, which is brought up in a number of the films by Indigenous creators at this year's festival, is that it's the lot goes on in Canada, but it's also an international movement about acknowledging Indigenous rights. I mean, some of that stuff is present in like Dennis Goulet's Night Raiders as well, with the international scope of the film and all that. But at the end, when you list those projects that are happening all over, that are either disrespectful to land rights, to treaties, to Indigenous people, to Aboriginal people, to the land as well. I think that's just a really strong moment in the film. Did you always intend to tie it together in that way, or?
I always intended, ideas grow, but part of the reason, or one of the hopes, is that we can explain, when you see protesting, you're like, why are they so angry? And so it's like, well, we're trying to do it with the law. We're trying to protect things, but we can't. And so it sort of explains the context of that. And then so I wanted to, maybe at the end of the film, I wanted to do something that showed that anger or showed that justification for it. But then I saw, this is going to sound dumb, but I saw Dixie Chicks March, the music video, and all those names of all those people that have been murdered. And that was the motivation to think about, the context of dams around the world generally hurt Indigenous populations. And when I was doing research for that, I was really quite surprised to see people just being mowed down by their government, by machine guns to get out of the way, people being murdered for being activists. It's just an intense, it's intense that people who want to love the water and the land, who see spirituality in the water, who have these values, who want to fight. And basically it's a good thing for all of us to protect water. But it's then that's the juxtaposition of the film. There's two ways of thinking, and one's like progress is number one. And then there's this other way of thinking where, being in reciprocity with what's around us is the way to live, how nature's designed to, work together. And so the overwhelming emotion I felt researching it, I was trying to convey to the audience, this isn't just here in this community, it's all over Canada. And you know what? I don't understand why a right to exist in today's age is something that we have to do. Like, if you have to go to the Supreme Court to protect who you are, you know, I feel like your rights are being violated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think because there's a lot of, and Canada's a new country, and you know, there's a lot of people that come here, and that's great. But I think what's lost is that connection to land that I'm trying to convey, is that we are one with our land. That's where all our memories are. You know, if you have a house, you remember where everything is. You know all the stories to the pieces. It's the same for them with the territory.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm
it's
not sure
also
I answered the question.
no. That was it was a better answer than the question, probably. The I have to. I mean, you know, I mean, what it. You know, it's appalling that people think progress comes with fish you can't eat, or neurotoxins in fish that you can't eat. That's not progress. That's it's just something else. It's money, right? But anyway, I just thanks so much for the film. We'll look forward to presenting it in person. And thanks for spending time with us. It's really, I think, one of the strongest docs I've seen on this, or strongest films on this subject in quite some time. So thanks so much for your dedication and for bringing it to us.
Thanks for having me.